Yeah, let's do a quick update on where we're at here. Yep, so we're, on the fifth day here of this is really phase one for us. So meetings and total of an hour walkthrough on the field. Today goes to an hour and 15 minutes. And then the players are running and lifting and doing things like that. Not on their own, but with the strength coaches, not with the football coaches. So got a lot of meeting time, time to get back into some physical activity and training, which is good. But really, we're still another 4 days of this before we start to move into phase two, and then a couple of days of phase two, and then a couple of days of phase three. And then, as Stacy said, then we get to the 17th. So moving along, the pace is what's been set up. So I think it's good. Players are they're transitioning to a higher gear and higher volume and more intensity on the basis that's probably good for training. So we're following that, and we're kind of halfway through this first process.
First question will be Tara Sullivan, followed by Ben Voll.
An overall question, but how would you best describe, just for you, what it's like working amid what is a very different and unpredictable circumstance this year? And the reason I ask is kind of how much flexibility it seems to demand, and how you feel your unique experience, all your years as a head coach, give you the ability to do that, to have the flexibility that maybe is needed this year.
Yeah, well, we'll just take it as it comes. Each step of the way, I think, is going to, maybe be a little bit different and require a little bit of thought and possibly creativity. But again, for right now, we're basically in a phase one situation or environment, and that's the way that's what we're doing. We're doing basically what we do in phase one, with, as I said, a few modifications. And so that's fine. We're being productive. We're using the time that we have to definitely make strides. But there's some things we can't do, but we're not going to focus on those. We're going to look at the things that we can do and try to make the most out of those. I think the players, coaches, and the entire organization have done a good job of that.
Next question, Ben Voll, followed by Ian Steele.
Good morning, Bill.
Hey, Ben.
Obviously, what's happening in the real world with the pandemic is very serious and is larger than football. And we've seen the last couple of weeks, I believe 67 players have opted out of this season. I'm just curious for you, was there any decision on your part about potentially not coaching this year, or were you always determined to coach through this?
I feel very good about the environment that we're in. So I feel fine.
Did anyone on your staff opt out?
Anyone on our staff? No.
Another topic that's been kind of talked about around the league is the idea of like putting a quarterback in quarantine this year, or certain positions, keeping a player in quarantine just in case. Is that something you're considering with the quarterback position or any other position on the team?
Yeah, I would say, as always, Ben, we'll try to look at our options and do what we feel is best for the football team. So that's what we'll continue to do.
So you haven't decided yet if you would do that?
As I said, we're in phase one. We're proceeding in phase one. I think everybody, I can't speak for everybody, but I think my impression is that as an organization, as a coaching staff, the support people, the players, there's a comfort level with what we're doing and who's doing it and how we're doing it, and we're being productive. So if concerns or problems come up, then we'll address those. But right now, I think it's it's a good working environment. We're getting a lot done, and the organization's taken a lot of steps to ensure everyone's safety and an opportunity to do their job and do it safely and do it productively. Certainly, there's a lot of responsibility on each one of us to do things in a way that don't affect others negatively, that we take the precautions that we can and should. So that's what we're doing.
And next question, Ian Steele, followed by Alan Siegel.
Thanks, Stacy. Bill, I'm curious, how has Cam Newton come to grasp the playbook in terms of the things that you've installed with him so far? How has that process been going for him?
Yeah, well, as I said, we're in phase one. We're presenting a lot of information, going through films, and we have a daily walkthrough, and that's about it. So, again, as I said, we're the restart of football is going at a slow pace right now. The training's ahead of the football, so that's what we're doing.
In terms of his, I guess, physical, how he's training and how he's looking on the field in terms of being healthy. I know he missed some time last year because of injury. Has he been up to speed and been able to participate in everything so far?
Yeah, well, again, the coaches aren't on the field for the training part of the program, so I couldn't really comment on that. That our strength coaches supervise that. The walkthroughs are the walkthroughs. They're walkthroughs.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Next question, Alan Siegel, followed by Dan Roach.
Thanks, Stacy. Hi, Bill. How you doing?
Good, Alan. How about you? What's up?
Okay, thanks. Bill, I wonder that, this is a different year, obviously. You get no preseason games, no practice with other teams. You have a different practice schedule, which you've alluded to this morning. So I'm wondering if you and the coaches have talked about the fact of having to narrow the scope of what you focus on so that when you do get on the field, your execution will be what you want entering the season.
Yeah. Again, I wouldn't characterize our preparations as there are things that we can't do. Again, pretty much everything that we're doing is what we do. It's not, setup's a little bit different, but we do phase one, we do phase two, we do phase three, we do training camp, we do padded practices, we do practices in shells, we do walkthroughs in training camp. We'll be doing all those things as we normally do. We won't be playing preseason games. So that'll definitely be one thing that we'll need to prepare for differently than we've prepared for in the past. We won't be able to, have those same kind of game experiences that preseason games provide. But everything else is the same. It's a modified pace or schedule, but the drills themselves and the sequence of those are essentially what they've been. It's just done in a different time frame, and it's done over a 6 to 7 week period instead of the 3 days a week in the spring and then 4 days a week at the end, and then a training camp period. So again, this is what every college team does. Every college team does the training camp, whatever it is, 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks before their first game. And essentially, after we get past, we start at the 17th, that puts us about in that, 4-week period until the first regular season game. One of those weeks would be a preparation for the opener. So it's very similar to what the college programs have always done and what they're doing now.
Great. Thanks, Bill.
We have to modify what we do to, I would say, be more similar or try to replicate it to a degree, what college teams do every single year.
Next question, Dan Roach, followed by Nora Princiotti. And I ask people, try not to do follow-up questions. We've got quite a few people who still want to ask questions, and we're running out of time. Thanks.
Good morning, Bill. Hope
Hey,
all is
Dan.
well. Hi. Just a question kind of following those lines of what you were just talking about. With all due respect, one of the great things to watch at training camp is to watch you, make corrections, hands-on with the players. Will you have to restrict yourself at all as you go about this in the different way, as far as being maybe less hands-on when you're trying to teach and give guys fundamentals as you go?
I mean, I guess we'll see. I don't. Yesterday was the first day that we had a walkthrough with both the offense and defense on the field at the same time. So prior to yesterday, we were defense against defense, offense against offense. So yesterday was our first chance to do that, and I would say it looked to me like all the coaches coached and players played pretty much like we always do, other than masks and some other modifications, things like that. But no, I didn't see any substantial difference. No.
Next question, Nora Princiotti, followed by Phil Perry.
Hey, Bill.
Nora.
Was there anything you guys did over the off season as all the teaching you were doing with players was virtual, and maybe even going forward here a little bit? I don't know if the bigger meetings are still digital at all, to just keep people engaged. You're staring at a computer screen. There's not that in-person thing. Anything that worked to kind of combat WebEx fatigue?
Oh yeah, definitely. We talked about that a lot. After about 2 meetings, we could see that was going to be the new, way of the world. And I think that we had a lot of staff. A decent amount of the staff meetings was dedicated to that, especially early. Coaches, we had a lot of individual meetings. Our team meetings were more limited because of, I would say, just the quality of having a meeting with, 60 or 90 people as opposed to having it with 4 or 5. The engagement's a lot higher. The interaction's a lot better. The mute button doesn't have to be off like it does when you have 100 people on the meeting and so forth. So anyway, we learned a lot about those virtual meetings, and we definitely did a lot of things to try to heighten the engagement, set up some competitive things, set up, a variety of things. And then the coaches exchanged ideas. One coach would say, hey, we did this. And then maybe another coach would pick up on that idea and do it, in a way that fit his room or his position. And, we might have a competition between the 2 rooms over, on a certain thing, and, let them compete against each other and see who's better at, whatever the activity was that was structured. I talked to a number of college coaches. They were, in a lot of cases, ahead of us on this because of spring ball. So they had their spring practice virtual meetings prior to the start of our all-season program, which I want to say was like mid-April. A lot of those teams were doing the same thing that we were doing in terms of meetings, virtual meetings, as early as the 1st of March. So, and again, some of those people had great suggestions. This really worked well for our team. Our guys love this, or we tried this and, it didn't work so well. Here's the problems with it. It sounds good, but it really wasn't. It didn't go over that well. So, and there was a lot of that. Our coaches talked to, like I said, several other college coaches and programs, and then we exchanged ideas, and that's how it was very educational for all of us to try to do that. Some activities I'd say worked better than others. And each coach kind of had to get a feel for, his players, his, their level of excitement to do certain things might not have matched, a similar concept or game or whatever it was. And so I'd say we modified our teaching and the interactions, some of the games, some of the competitions, things like that we did over the course of the spring. Followed up a little bit on those in the week, the first week when we came back. I think it was the 8th or whatever it was, when everybody was still quarantined on the testing. So we were able to continue that from the spring. So yeah, I mean, long answer to a short question there, but yes, we did it on a number of different levels. We learned a lot as we went along. I think the players are responsive, productive. They certainly gave us a lot of good feedback too. You know, a lot of those guys are a lot more, you know, tech savvy and had some good ideas way ahead of some of the people on the coaching staff. Particularly myself, I'd probably be at the bottom of that tech list. And we, you know, used some of their ideas as well. So, you know, collectively, I thought things went, you know, better than I thought they were going to go, to tell you the truth. I thought they went, you know, pretty good. We followed up on it. And, you know, going forward, it might be something that I probably would have never even considered a year ago. Now, after having a pretty significant amount of experience with it, I could see where there might be a place for it in the future. So, you know, that's kind of where we are on it. But thank you for the question.
And my apologies to everyone else I won't get to, but we'll end with two final questions, Phil Perry and Megan O'Brien. Go ahead, Phil.
Thanks, Stacy. Hey, Bill, I'm just curious because you have spoken in the past about how the NFL has sort of a rhythm to each year, not just in season, but the off season as well, and a very predictable calendar. And obviously that calendar changed this year, and I don't want to, of course, trivialize the reason for why the calendar changed, but I am curious for you, having been in the league, how did that feel to not be on that same calendar that you are so used to? Are you feeling at all a different level of energy maybe coming into this year because you had to be away for as long as you did? I'm just kind of curious as to how the change in the calendar impacted you, if at all.
Yeah, well, I think we've spoken about this before, but in a lot of respects, this is similar to 2011. In many respects, it's different. But in terms of not seeing the players until training camp, it's similar. We certainly had a lot more interaction with the players this year than we did during the lockout season. And then we had the preseason games in that season that we're not going to have in this season. So there are definitely differences, but there are some similarities in some of the players and coaches that were here at that time. You know, we've reflected on that, and I think there are some things that we learned from that year that have application. And then again, there's other things that don't. Yeah, each year is different. This year, the ramp up pace, instead of being during the spring and then taking a break and coming back to training camp, is all taking place in one sequence without a break, essentially. And that's a little bit different, but I think it'll work. I think the players will be prepared physically and mentally to play football, assuming the conditions stay similar to what they are now. I think we've seen that. It's been almost 2 weeks that we've been from virtual to phase 1 to now we're starting to ease into a little bit of a higher phase 1, which will lead into phase 2. And so I think the progression is, you know, logical. I think it's working. We've got a long way to go, and we have quite a bit of time before the opening game. So hopefully we'll be in a competitive position at that point, and I'm sure that we'll continue to improve as a team like we always do in the first several weeks of the season. But again, that's the way it always is. You know, the 80-man roster, we've dealt with that before, although not recently. So, you know, I think when you put it all together, we have and we will find a way to make it work, and we'll try to make it as effective as we can.
Thanks, Bill.
We'll have Megan O'Brien. You've got the last question.
Thanks, Stacy. Bill, now that you and the players are back in the building, what's been the biggest adjustment that you and your staff have had to make due to COVID regulations and the stadium's new setup?
Biggest adjustment? Honestly, I wouldn't say any of it has just been overwhelming. We wear masks. There's not a buffet line for food. The food's ordered. It's, boxed and packaged, but the dining staff has done a great job. The meetings are in bigger rooms. We're more spread out. but essentially it's the same meeting. We're just distanced and wearing masks. I think everybody's just a little more conscious of the hand washing, the sanitizing, the distancing, wear monitors and all that. I mean, there's just a higher awareness of it, but I mean, fundamentally, we're still going over the same material in a similar progression. We have walkthroughs, we have meetings, we have training and conditioning. We're going to eventually have, individual drills when we get to phase 2. Then we're going to get to phase 3 and have 11 on 11 drills. So, I don't think it's monumental, but certainly there are adjustments, none of which are, I would say, particularly inhibiting. It's a little bit different, maybe a little bit more time consuming and just more precautionary. But I think we've tried to address everything, and we've asked the players, and they've been great. We've asked the players for their input. If they see something that looks a little, like it needs to be adjusted or corrected or whatever, they're good to bring it up, and then we take a look at it and do what we can to, whatever the situation is, try to improve it. But we're very fortunate here. We have a stadium. We have a big facility. I know there are other teams that are dealing in a much smaller training facility. I mean, we have, a lot of big spaces and open space that we can work with, and that's very helpful in the environment that we're in. And we have great food service and, big training room and weight room and so forth. So we're able to accommodate with the visitors locker room. When you add that in, we're able to accommodate, I think 80 people, I would say pretty comfortable. I mean, of course we have some plexiglass and things like that up that, take things a step further, but, we're able to handle the number of people and, what we would normally do. It's been pretty effective. Again, we're not walking across the hall to a meeting. We're walking, maybe down the end of the tunnel to it. But, again, to me, those are relatively minor things. So I'd say overall, we're trying to, and we're doing things pretty close to the way we normally do them with, as I said, more masks, more plexiglass for sure. I don't know what the plexiglass bill around here is, but it's got to be pretty high.
Thank you very much, Coach. Thanks, everyone. And